A couple of decades ago, if someone says that a prisoner has come out from the jail, we all run into our houses and close the doors. It used to create panic and we get safety problems. Now our idea about prisoners is quite different. Due to prison ministry, often meeting them, talking to them and listening to their real experiences and their background, we have a lot of compassion and understanding and sensitivity to reach out to them. We have come to the new realization now that prison ministry is biblical ministry, and Jesus himself inaugurated it on the cross. When Jesus, the innocent Savior, was hanging between the two criminals, he contemplated this ministry in his mind. Jesus is the founder of this ministry. It is a spiritual ministry, human ministry, and ethical ministry. Because prison is the place where Jesus identifies himself as he is there. I was in prison, you visited me. In this context, what Jesus said in 10:10 of John's Gospel, I came that they may have life and have it abundantly, is very true and challenging too. As true followers of Jesus, we Christians believe only in giving life and not in destroying life or taking it away from someone. Only in giving life we become true followers of Jesus. What are the different reasons for the increase in crimes in our country? Or are the crimes more nowadays? Or more visible due to the social media? Or the gap, the disparity between the rich and the poor is increasing more? I think, my dear brothers and sisters, that criminals are not born but made. Society puts some people in such a situation that they take to crime just to survive or to support a family or to avenge a society that has not been just to them or to challenge the luxurious life that some people live while exploiting the helpless poor. They feel abandoned by society and justified in taking revenge, often in minor ways. They feel cheated by the economic and socio-political structures of a community that gives birth to so many poor people and continues to oppress and suppress them. That we have seen in the context of COVID-19. So many migrants or guest workers who are working for the development of our country just left on the road to survive or to die. We cannot forget those scenes. Life in an unequal society challenges any value systems proposed by the dominant group. They grow up in families and circumstances in which the laws seem oppressive and discriminatory. Life for these people is a continuing challenge. It holds little meaning for them. So the question we have to ask is not why crimes are increasing. That's not the right question. Why crimes are increasing? No. But rather, what is the kind of society we are living in which gives rise to more crimes? Why does it give rise to more crimes? What is my contribution to reduce the crimes? How do I show compassion and mercy to them and bring life and hope? I would like to share with you at this juncture, my dear brothers and sisters, a true life experience of a teacher whom I encountered in one of my seminars. A few years ago, as I finished my talk about the prison ministry for the teachers in a school in New Delhi, After my session, a teacher came up to me and shared a very poignant experience. She was a regular visitor to the shrine in that area. She used to go there in her car and she prayed to Mother Mary, and every time she used to buy a garland from outside. And she was telling me she regularly noticed a particular sight in front of the shrine. Whenever she was entering inside the shrine, a shabbily dressed young boy, about 12 years old, used to approach her every time she was going into the shrine with the garland in her hand and pester her to buy one. She used to wonder, this boy sees a garland in my hand. Why again he is asking me to buy the garland? She deliberately avoided him. She considered him a drifter and a petty thief. And these are the boys, sometimes they come near us, they touch our body, our bags, and finally they snatch our things. Again and again, since the boy was coming to her, sometimes she was telling me, as she comes out of the shrine, again the boy will come and ask her, Madam, please buy a garland. Why? Coming out of the shrine, I need a garland. The boy must be a thief. And she shouted at him. Once she even said to him, if you come to me like this, I would even take you to the police station. Then came summer vacation. She went home for her holidays, hometown. After spending a month almost, she was at home. Then she returned to her original place. She resumed her routine of visiting the shrine every Saturday. But to her surprise, this time the boy was nowhere to be seen. Out of curiosity, she started to look for him. She could not spot him anywhere near the shrine. A few days later, she saw that boy sitting under the tree near the church. He had one or two garlands with him, but seemed very dull, not very enthusiastic about selling them. She asked him, why do you look so upset and forlorn? Earlier, you used to regularly pester me to buy a garland. Now what happened? Why are you looking so miserable? With the tears welling up in his eyes, the boy said, I was then desperately in need of money. My sister, 9-year-old, the one younger to me, was diagnosed with blood cancer. She needed money for treatment, and I was frantically trying to collect some money for her treatment. I thought by selling a few garlands, I can buy some medicine for her with that money. And the teacher asked him, don't you need money now? Unable to control himself, the boy broke down. In a faltering voice, he continued, now that she is no more, why do I need money? Saying this, he moved away. The teacher continued sharing with me. I was mortified to stand before that young boy, her tears rolling down. I never imagined that the children on the streets could be with such wretched backgrounds. And so I deliberately avoided them. It never occurred to me to reach out to them. But now, after listening to the pathetic stories of the prisoners from you, I feel I should do something to mitigate that misery. I feel guilty. I need to do something now. Sister, please tell me, how can I get involved in this noble ministry? Aren't these children angry at society later? The ones who later on indulge in all sorts of crimes and turn out to be dacoits, murderers, gang leaders, and terrorists? Criminals are not born, they are made by society. They are humans like any of us. They have the feelings of hunger, thirst. They have certain needs to be fulfilled. They need physical things, and they are craving for love, affection, and kindness and understanding. Their cry is just this: हमें प्यार दीजिए, हम आपको अच्छा समाज बनाएंगे. That means, give us love, we in turn will assist you to create a beautiful society. Give us love, we will assist you to create a beautiful society. I love to quote here Pope Francis' experience. I have a special relationship with the people in prison, deprived of their freedom. I have always been attached to them, precisely because of my awareness of being a sinner. Every time I go through the gates into a prison to celebrate Mass or for a visit, I always think, why them, not me? I should be here, and I deserve to be here. Their fall could have been mine. At this juncture, my dear brothers and sisters, I would ask you this question: why do people commit crimes? Why do people commit crimes? I'm not justifying. It's okay that they make mistakes. I'm not justifying. What is the reason? There is less tolerance among people for those who have a problem. They do not know what to do. Some come from broken families and have neither self-discipline nor scruples. There was no one to discipline them. Parents, family, and society have distanced them. They have no clue as to what is right and what is wrong. My dear brothers and sisters, from the time we were born in our family, good families, we have been taught what is right and what is wrong. In the catechism classes, in the school, by our good parents, in the society, we were taught to differentiate right from wrong. But many of these people, nobody is there to teach them. For them, everything is right, everything is wrong. These constitute 5 to 10% of those in the jail. Another set of people are poor and unemployed due to illiteracy. They seek financial security through some criminal activity like cheating and stealing. A few are also subject to their friends' peer group pressure to do something daring and to make fast money. Many want to have a high standard of living. As human beings, we all have our own desires and expectations. If they don't get what they want, they rob or snatch things. There is another set of people in prison who are wrongly confined. All those who are in the prison, they are not criminals. under suspicion or false charges, and they are in the prison though they are innocent. They are subjected to the rigors of prison life due to miscarriage of justice caused by the apathy and negligence of the law enforcing forces or officers. Some may not even know the reasons for their detention. Obviously, such prisoners find it difficult to adjust to the exactitudes of the prison. They find life inside the prison more appalling and intimidating. Finally, they are forced to join some gangs and learn to do more crimes. We normally say in the prison, they enter the prison as undergraduates and they come out of the prison as postgraduates. A large percentage of violent criminals are youth in the age group of 18 to 35 who are lured or exploited by dealers and brokers for their own gains. There are a sizable number of detainees who hail from decent and respectable families and backgrounds. They conduct themselves very well. They indulged in crime just for the thrill of it, or out of monetary or momentary impulsiveness, situational circumstances, that is, not able to deal with anger under momentary madness, or property matters and provocation, or drug use or alcoholic addiction. Sometimes crimes are committed not simply because of poverty, but because of a lack of moral formation that distinguishes between right and wrong. And very important reason, my dear brothers and sisters, parents are irresponsible or busy with their work. There is no one to guide them in their young age. Upbringing has a lot to do with what people do or become later in their lives. When you look at all these reasons, the real criminals are only 6 to 10%. They should be put in the jail, and there also they need to be taught, formed, trained to come out and live once again a decent life. Saint Cardinal Newman once said to the prisoners, "We both are the same, but you are caught and I am yet to be caught." Very beautifully he said in the prison. You are caught and we are yet to be caught. All make mistakes. We are given a chance to repent. Many these prisoners, they are not given a second chance. Many they used to tell me, if we are given another chance, we will never do this crime. Pope Francis has been repeatedly expressing his concern for the prisoners. When he goes on his pastoral visits across the world, he always makes it a point to visit the prisons and to comfort them. He even surprised the world by washing the feet of the inmates of an Italian jail on a Maundy Thursday when he was elected as Holy Father. He says, life means getting our feet dirty. He said this when he visited the inmates at a prison in Philadelphia, United States. Life means getting our feet dirty. Whenever he visits the prisons, he appeals to the authorities to take practical measures which are urgently needed to improve the living conditions inside the prisons. He has expressed his innermost concern for those who are detained or still awaiting trial. He has urged the authorities to consider favorably the rehabilitation of the prisoners in mainstream society after their release. He is pleading with the governments to abolish the death penalty wherever it is still in force and to reconsider the possibility of an amnesty. I would like to share with you, my dear brothers and sisters, how can we help the prisoners to become transformed persons? A crime is perpetrated on the spur of the moment. Something must have induced the person to commit that criminal act. Often, mind plays a major role in determining the behavior of a criminal. A prison sentence should aim at refining the mindset. A prison sentence should aim at refining the mindset. Number 2, the definition of a prisoner as a lawbreaker, as a criminal, and a malicious element in society who deserves to be punished, who should be thrown in the jail. This idea has to be changed. Number 3, attitudinal change in criminal behavior can be achieved through our personal interactions. Number 4, listening to them, counseling them can be very effective in weaning them away from crime. Take time, spend time. They are God's children. They are our brothers and sisters. Any hardened prisoner, hardcore criminal can be changed if we listen to them, accept them, and tell them, I'm there, I'm for you, I understand you. Counseling is a very good tool to help them. Next, they should be made aware of their legal rights. The procedures to have them enforced should be prominently displayed. Opportunities should be provided to get spiritual and value-based education. This is very, very important. Spiritual help, value-based education. And I've seen in the prison written in one jail, whenever a school door is opened, a prison door is closed. Opening the school doors, giving them spiritual, moral and value-based education, you are closing somewhere the prison doors. Jobs should be made available and they should be paid well so that their financial security will prevent their minds to commit crimes. And one more thing we can do. The real purpose of sending criminals to prison is to reform them, to transform them into honest and law-abiding citizens by inculcating in them an aversion for crime and criminality. It is for this reason that the modern approach lays greater emphasis on their reformation and rehabilitation and on preparing them for a normal life in the society. My dear friends, let me conclude with the observations of our Holy Father Pope Francis. The death penalty is inadmissible because it is an attack on the inviolability and dignity of the person. The Church works with determination for its abolition worldwide. Let his observation assist in intensifying our own conviction to stand up for life. As Mahatma Gandhi said once, God alone gives life and God alone can take away life. And we oppose everything, including the death penalty that harms and destroys life. My questions to you at the end: is there anyone who truly cares for them? Is there anyone who is actually responsible for his or her welfare? What is the milieu of their lives? What about their family, their kith and kin? What is their future? And finally, who can help them? How? The questions are going on numerous. But the answers, my dear brothers and sisters, if any, you and I know. Thank you very much. God bless you.